Leland K. Young was born in Falco, Alabama on September 15, 1931, and he and his family moved to Alturas, Florida shortly thereafter. The son of a farmer and one of 8 siblings, Leland started working in the groves at an early age. He met his future wife, Wanda Jean Perdue, in a one-room schoolhouse in the late 1930s and married her in 1953. They bought their first grove shortly thereafter and raised 2 children, Scott Young and Lisa Rath Jensen, each of whom have dedicated their lives to the Florida citrus industry.
Daddy was lucky enough to have a really great partner. His wife, my mother, Wanda Jean Perdue, was exceptional. They made a great partnership. He could bring a business deal that was going on like nobody's business, and Mama could figure out how to pay for it. And that was the partnership.
He started running crews in the harvesting business with the Pasco Packing Corporation in the early 1950s after serving in the U.S. Army at Fort Jackson as an MP. In the mid-1960s, he was hired as a fruit buyer for Kraft Foods, where he was recognized for re-engineering the fruit delivery system at the plant to make unloading trailers and conveying fruit more efficient. Evans Packing Corporation hired him away from Kraft, and Leland remained with Evans for the next 23 years. During this period, Leland and his wife Wanda formed Peace Valley Enterprises Incorporated, which began as a sod and hauling company and developed into their primary business of citrus hauling, dolomite delivery, and citrus caretaking. New Way Fruit Company Incorporated was the harvesting company he developed, employing hundreds of workers.
He had a company called New Way Fruit Company, and they picked and hauled fruit for several different companies around Polk County and up in Pasco County. And then he started a company called New Jet, which was a micro irrigation emitter that he came up with the idea. And of course, there again, he found somebody who was a tool and die maker that could make the tools and the dies to make the jet.
He was the epitome of a pioneer and an innovator, buying a plastic injection mold machine in the early 1980s, hiring an engineer, and manufacturing the first low-volume emitters in Florida via his company, New Jet, significantly undercutting the foreign competition. He invented the stabilizer buckle stake, designed to hold tubing in place for proper placement of jets.
And he come up with the idea, and he set out there and draw it up just like he wanted. And it's still on that cap. That's the way the jet looked like on that cap. And I used to haul them to Vero Beach to a big plant down there. Wherever he wanted to go, I was carried.
He couldn't get over the fact that jets were 25 cents a piece. And so he knew he could do it better. So he bought a plastic injection molding machine, hired engineers, worked with the University of Florida, cut a mold for a low volume emitter, and that was the beginning of New Jet. It was at a period of time when we were rapidly moving out of irrigation overhead sprinklers into under tree. And without those jets being sold previously for 25 cents to a nickel, he sold them for a nickel, and it made irrigation immediately affordable. And without it, we don't have that proliferation of low volume irrigation when we were so desperate for it in the freezes of the 80s.
He invented this stabilizer, which helped keep the tubing and everything in place, so when the water was going out, it was going where it needed to be. It was being delivered exactly where it needed to be and when it needed to be.
You know, I personally managed installing it on over 30,000 acres of citrus, and in most of those blocks, we doubled our production.
Always collaborative, Leland often worked with chemical companies on field trials, most significantly participating in the trial for the eradication of the diaperes root weevil. Additionally, Leland is credited, along with Nick Albritton, for influencing the Florida Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services during the canker crisis for demanding a tarp for every semi-tractor and not a tarp for every trailer, saving the industry millions of dollars.
Originally, the tarps were required to be on all the trailers. And Leland pointed out that the sensible way to do this was to put them on all the trucks, which caused there to be a big savings of money because you didn't need as many tarps, and it accomplished the same purpose.
A loyal, dedicated member of Haines City Citrus Growers Association, Florida's Natural Growers, Florida Citrus Mutual, Florida Farm Bureau, and Farm Credit of Central Florida, Leland was quick to seek out and implement a new solution for any challenge or burdensome task he faced. He was also respected for his hard work, generous nature, and a commitment to innovation within the agricultural industry.
His biggest contribution was bringing people together and solving issues that he saw in the field on a daily basis that people behind a desk and in Tallahassee and even Washington didn't understand because they weren't on the ground seeing the impact.
And that was the thing about Leland, is he always had the welfare of the industry at heart.
He generously shared his workspace, the barn, with the entire industry for numerous large industry events, fundraisers, Miss Florida citrus promotions, and political campaigns, providing a vehicle for millions of dollars to be raised for charity and citrus ag-eccentric politicians. For over 40 years, he hosted the Florida Southern College Citrus Institute and horticultural students at thousands of citrus industry events, meetings, and educational forums that took place at the barn, introducing them to political and industry leaders that would shape many of their careers into becoming industry and legislative leaders themselves.
You know, Leland's barn was used for so many events, industry-wide events. And so if you were a candidate for a public office and you wanted to make an impression in the citrus industry, if you could get Leland to agree to host a fundraiser for you and allow you to use his barn, added legitimacy to anybody that was running for office.
Leland was famous in political circles for the barn, and he would hold many, many fundraising functions at the barns for politicians that he liked.
He and Wanda Jean provided the industry with not just their wisdom and their presence, but the barn was a perfect backdrop for the kind of individual that Leland was, that he was accepting of everybody, willing to help everybody, and that ended up being the perfect device and vehicle for him to do that.
People met their future spouses there. Business deals were cut there. A lot of political issues were resolved there. It was just an incredible, fortuitous intersection of the right guy with the right idea and really at the right time.
When you heard Leland, you knew that meant Leland Young. And when you heard the barn, you already knew where it was.
A true ambassador for the Florida citrus industry, he had the uncanny ability to bring people together regardless of their station in life, and worked constantly behind the scenes to bring everyone together for the betterment of the Florida citrus industry. Leland passed away March 24, 2023, but his legacy remains.
His livelihood was as a citrus caretaker, but his value to the industry way transcended anything that he did professionally, honestly. It really was more his social connections and his ability to connect people that were his real gift to the industry and his real legacy.
Their real legacy has been their grandchildren, and he really taught them to be the powerhouses that all three are. One's an attorney, two work in government, one in municipal government, one in Congress, and so that apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
He instilled many loves. The love of farming, the love of the industry, the love of hard work, and never complaining. Love for the working man. He just made you look at people differently. There was no class of man to Leland. Everybody was as good as what they gave.
Daddy represented a Florida citrus grower, the epitome of one. He really is.
But everything he get in history, he deserved. Because he blessed so many people in his life, in his livelihood.
Representative of the men that built the citrus industry, when hard work was currency, we are honored to add Leland K. Young's name as the newest member of the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame.